We have a very special opportunity today to wrap up this conference day. We have an opportunity to speak about Kherson today, Kherson yesterday, and Kherson in the future. And at the previous session that I had the opportunity to hear, I think they sort of served as an introduction to this conversation. I hope it's going to be very interesting. We have wonderful speakers with us. They were just as wonderful as the previous panels, but still, I wanted to introduce Yevhen Hlibovitsky, CEO of the Frontier Institute. Serhiy Danilov, Deputy Director of the Center for Middle East Studies and I think a leader of multiple social initiatives. Oksana Glebushkina, Executive Director of the New Generation Center and Deputy Head for Local Employment Center in Kherson Oblast, and of course Volodymyr Mykolayenko, Mayor of Kherson from 2014 to 2020. So to start today's conversation about the frontierness, about the resilience, about the identity, perhaps constructed identity during the war. I wanted to have like a blitz series with all our participants. Just let's have 1 minute each. What is Kherson like today? What are the key challenges in this paradigm of life versus survival? How do you envision Kherson in this context? We can start with Yevhen. Let's be brief. I guess I'm the farthest person from the Kherson experience here on this stage, and I would say that Kherson, that was an administrative center, a locality with all of its lack of certainty and visibility to outside, has acquired a meaning, has acquired significance, has acquired importance. I think that now we are learning more about Kherson, and that is why it is becoming important, because it is acquiring agency, it is acquiring an image in the eyes of Ukrainians. And as we grow, we are starting to value what we have or what we lost or what we may lose. And thus Kherson is becoming cornerstone, because this is a border, this is a frontier, this is a lot of uncertainty about what's to come. Thank you. I completely agree that Kherson is acquiring significance. Yevhen said for Ukrainians and for Ukraine overall, not only in the eyes of current residents of Kherson, and I believe it's very important and interesting. Serhiy, I will refer to the conversations I have with Kherson residents, because I visit but I don't live in Kherson. I would say they really don't like it when Kherson is called unbreakable. They find it insulting. They say our city is abused, violated, torn, and this is a city that is dwindling, that feels that the frontier is moving within the city, while before, after liberation, we went to the Kandika area, we reached the bridge, locals will know what I'm talking about. Now it is getting farther from the bank of the Dnieper River, the point that was always the axis of the city. It is moving farther north, farther to the residential areas, and this is a testimony of the space dwindling. And people get really triggered by this. This is more about identity, but also it shows how differently people respond. Some become apathetic, some lose hope, but at the same time, there is a new solidarity that emerged back during the occupation and keeps holding the city the way we see it now. Thank you. Oksana? It works. Hi, everyone. If we are speaking through metaphors and images, not pure numbers, because there are numbers that should be taken into account in terms of the city dwindling, because we have a changing demographic, changing numbers of children and young people. But I would also say that there is a contrast there. It is quiet and it's very loud. It's quiet because there are few people and few processes. And there is a habit from occupation to wrap up everything by 3 p.m. and to go back home. It is loud because it is shelled every day from every kind of weapon. I think you all saw that this morning 20 aerial bombs were launched at Kherson. It is underground because a lot of life takes place underground, but it is full of life because that underground is full of life. All public spaces work underground, administration works underground, businesses work not underground, but they do work, they produce things, they provide services. So on the one hand, it is a city that lives, but since the security situation is threatening every day, it is quite difficult. That contrast is characteristic of the whole life. Children go to interest clubs wearing jackets so they can quickly go to a shelter. People learn how to provide first aid. Everyone can go to a performance at some point. The cultural life goes on, and there is a lot of color, a lot of life in this, but also a lot of contrast. Thank you. You know, it's a very difficult question for me, because I still remember Kherson in 2022, at the beginning of the war. A city that I loved and love, that I remember. And for you, Kherson changed, but for me, it did not. So I feel a certain life stage that is challenging, because I come home and at the same time need to accept all the destruction that took place there. It's very difficult. I cannot perceive even things I see on TV about our city. For many people here, Kherson is home or an important place, an important spot on the map of Ukraine. For me, it is not just a home. It is a city for which I was responsible as a mayor for a long time, that I took care of, and which I knew quite well. I knew not just the visual component of the city. I knew even things that nobody ever thought of. Kherson is part of me. And I came here to listen rather than speak. Thank you. Thank you very much. I think that indeed coming back home to Kherson must be challenging, and I wish you strength to perceive this comeback the way it should be. We spoke about Kherson as a frontier and its importance for Ukraine overall and for its residents. We spoke about Kherson's survival as a sprint or a marathon. We spoke about risks and about the dwindling space for people's life. And there was the point of diversity. I felt like this was similar to Kharkiv experience, which we know, but we cannot really evaluate it at this point. So I have this question to you. Please volunteer to respond first. As of today, looking at the events at the beginning of the full-scale war, what is the secret of Kherson Region's resilience, social resilience, other aspects of resilience? Because very often resilience is perceived as a metaphor. It is a metaphor, but it can also manifest itself through specific actions, specific policies. Oksana spoke about this. Businesses keep operating, services are still provided. This frontier nature, particularly here, how can it manifest itself? May I speak? Of course. It seems to me that resilience is about people, about the residents, about those who are used to being free, to living freely. And most importantly, they understand that you have to fight for this freedom. I think this is the most important feature of Ukrainians overall. Also, it is about people who have dignity. I would say that resilience and dignity are almost synonyms today. And, you know, it doesn't mean that you cannot be broken because, like, I don't want to give you examples, but in any case, you feel like you are part of something bigger and something great. Ukraine, the people, the history. And this vision, this sense of unity, that you feel certain respect, certain pride. This is probably what underpins our people's resilience. Thank you. Thank you. You say that resilience is similar to dignity, and we really have to think about this. I can continue if we look back at February 2022. I think it's about horizontal ties, about an interaction of people and a strong civil society. I would say in a situation when almost all official public authorities were suspended or had to relocate, people showed they were capable of living, of organizing their lives, of interacting. And it could only be made possible by the interaction and communication that existed.
We had a discussion about identity, about uniqueness, and we have the use of several phrases, like about the neighbor with names, like finally appeared because people finally found out who are their neighbors. They were saving each other, they were helping each other. And we were talking about Steppe. Remember, so he was the part of this conversation. We were talking that probably this soundness is the recipe for our resilience. When you live in the steppe, you have to be on alert all the time. You have to look around because there is a danger from coming from any direction. At the same time, there is south. It's about hospitality. It's about something we didn't know about ourselves, because the first protest that happened during the occupation, there was such a big number, never any other protest in the history of Kherson collected so many people. The people who would never go out to the street to protest, they went out. Even the people who were despising all this mass gatherings, etc., they didn't believe in it, they went out. For many people, it was the first experience of mass protest, and it says a lot. Let me specify. Maybe my question is a bit naive, but why did they go out? Because they felt they're losing their land. It's a threat. And they were like, okay, we will later on, we will decide between ourselves what we're going to do in Kherson, but it's an external threat. And it was a phenomenon because no one was organizing it. Even there was a rule not to encourage other people to go because it was very dangerous. Like, we were deciding it with the nearest one, like, let's go, let's go. People were walking and they were coming to those meetings, and I think the threat of losing their home, losing their land, mobilized everyone. And people were not afraid to go out and tell into the face of Russian soldiers, we were not waiting for you here. You are not welcomed here. Yes, let me continue. What Oksana said, like, it resonates with me a lot. So why people were going out? They were trying to fight for their physical sense of space. It's our home, it's our land, it's our sea, it's our river. And when you ask people in Kherson, or those who managed to escape from occupation, they say like that it was like this. There was one podcast done with Petro Kabernik, the journalist from Kherson. He says that before this full-scale invasion, the journalist community in Kherson was very competitive and not very friendly. They had conflicts. And he says that now all the journalists who live and work in Kherson is a family. And they help each other, they help to find stories, they find the protagonists, to find some places. It has become a very friendly community. All the people who work in Kherson, they feel the need to help their colleagues. I'm talking about the situation right now. And we had this little communication with people in Kherson, with colleagues, and they all say that, for example, if my organization is providing an organization to kids or adults, and in the process of communication with the beneficiary, we find out that they have additional problems. Legal problems, some problems with documents. We are always looking for someone to refer them to, someone who can help them. We're taking care about someone who needs help, and very close interaction of the civil society organizations who work in a very difficult conditions, when a lot of great initiatives have no longer funding. They're competing for small amounts of money, but they continue to support each other. There are very bright examples of a cooperation in the community that used to be more competitive than cooperative. But now it is very cooperative, and it shows us what is solidarity and how you can remain resilient and live in Kherson. Other respondents tell us that in order to survive, you have to find the meaning. I mean, survive psychologically. You have to find something meaningful that you do. And if you have a meaning, if you feel the purpose, it prevents burnout and depression, because like being depressed, like apathy, is the worst thing. And finding a way to be useful to others is a way of preserving thyself, and solidarity and help and cooperation is a very considerable factor of personal resilience. I'm looking at the presence of Kherson in a lot of areas of life, in Ukrainian life, during the latest 30 years, and it feels like the process that was happening in Kherson very similar to the global process in Ukraine. Ukraine gains its independence in 1991, and for some part of people it's very valuable from the very first day. And part of the society is lost, confused, and they don't understand who we are, what's going on. And there are a lot of people who have trouble answering the question who we are, and for them to be able to say we are Ukrainians, they had to undergo their own personal process of owning this world, of owning this land. And I think we have come to the critical mass of people who said, like, this is us, this is our country. We are we have the ownership, and they undertook the responsibility. And I think same things happened in Kherson. Kherson, I remember in 2019, 18, 20, it still had all those ingredients. It still had all those people. They were there. They were all these components that later on has become this a part of this fantastic example of struggle and resilience. This unexpected resilience, unexpected resistance, which no one paid attention to, no one believed it's possible, but this is what happened. And I think Kherson is able to overcome totalitarianism while preserving a thread. You can go back by this thread and restore your identity, restore your memory. And even if on the way during the generations you lose something like language or some other element of one's identity, this thread will still lead you back to who you are. And now we are about to get to know Kherson, new Kherson. Kherson today is the city of possibilities. Kherson now is the city of determination. Kherson understands the price, and people of Kherson understand what is good and what is bad very well. It's not the Kherson we remember before the invasion. If before Kherson was a city of some extreme reactions, I'm talking now about the murder of Katerina Handzuk, the city of some conflicts of criminal barons. Now we can see different Kherson. It's the society that is civil society. It's a society that is forming the civil society, and these people who get their names and who get their collective voice. It's not the end of the game. It's only the beginning. The child is born. The child has to learn how to walk and how to talk. But I would say that this restoration, this defrosing, started in the beginning of 90s from the west of Ukraine, and it included the building of a very important coalition between the center and the west of Ukraine. Back in 2000s, and with Kherson we can say that South joined this coalition, and East will join as well, and we will finish this transition finally. And together with the emergence of this new ownership, new agency, the getting Crimea back will continue this movement for agency. And Kherson now is an avant-garde of this process. I'm looking at the faces here in the audience. I understand that these are the people who understand the subtle tones of the census, but we don't see here the representatives of the administration and people who will be implementing the census. We now, as victims, are here to witness the emergence of Kherson as new political and cultural phenomenon, as the new agency. Thank you very much. There were a lot of very interesting thoughts. It seems to me that Kherson, just as other cities, it has chosen the new modern Ukrainian identity, and it's a very dynamic process. And it's much more complicated than we could have imagined like 30 years ago when we gained independence, because it's an organic process and it's not that someone triggered it, some wave. It's a certain scenario that happens in the big cities. But it can be the same for other cities in the east of Ukraine. We were talking about horizontal connections, about some elements of mutual help, about reaction on occupation, reaction to threat that resulted in the resilience that we all observed and continue observing. You can Google a lot of events that happened, but when we talk about resilience, we talk about the ability to adjust to the stress. And at the frontier line, they can change. The risks can change. And despite the general security canvas, and in order for the system to adjust itself all the time, certain resources are needed, because there are discussions like where is the limit for this resilience, where is the limit of this ability to adjust. We're talking about frontierness. What kind of scenarios are possible here? In order to support this resilience, you need the resources. Tell us, please, in your opinion, like there are never enough of them, but still, what can be done to make sure that under such a difficult conditions, this ability to adapt could be supported, to make sure that this frontierness, that this resistance is dynamic and we can withstand it, because to live all the time under the threat is a very difficult experience. Despite all other nice words and metaphors, what do we need today and tomorrow? You know, for me, it's a very difficult question, because I really would like to understand how should I go on, how should I live and work in Kherson, how can I use my possibilities to help Kherson, whom I should engage into these processes. I cannot tell you yet. I'm not sure what are the problems of Kherson right now, what should I pay attention to right now. But I would like to say that the events like this give us the possibility to bring people together, to unite them around certain problem, to unite all those who care about the destiny of Kherson city, and I hope it will be one of the steps to solve this problem. Yes, it's a very difficult question for me as well, because I don't have any proposals, any answers like let's do this, I'm sure this is going to work, because a lot of questions are connected with security and it holds back a lot of the processes. There are people who stay in the city and they need help, and there are people who stay in the city and they provide this help, and it's all about people. And right now, the condition of the people is the factor that decides whether it's going to work or not. And we really have lack of human resource in the civil society organization, in business, in government bodies. There is still a lot of need in evacuation. Very often communal services are not able to go there. It's being done by the volunteers. Now there is a second wave because the volunteer of mobilizations and a lot of volunteers are being conscripted, and Kherson is trying to tell that everyone who is working in the 30-kilometer zone, they are keeping on their shoulders this critical infrastructure, because if those people go, no one will help, no one will bring food, no one will take out the bodies. And the assistance with social care is very pressing at the city right now. There is no social service that is able to do it, taking into account all the risks, the drones that is there all the time. All those people who work there right now. I'm not living in Kherson right now. I work for Kherson. I come from time to time, but the situation with security limits us a lot in our projects, because we are not the humanitarian organization. We deal with development projects. The people who work, they do not let themselves rest, take care of their health, and taking into account that we all living under long-term stress. These people go from work directly to the hospital when the body cannot take it anymore. They go to the hospital, they get treatment, and they go back to work. And it's such a long shift which has no end, because there is no one to replace you on your shift. What kind of solution can be there? There are no digital solutions that can help. Yes, the automatization of some processes could help, because the people who stay there are mostly elderly people. Let me give you some statistics. So the children of school age 32,000 used to be, now it's 18,000. In the kindergarten, 13,000 of children, now it's 4,000 of children. It means that there is almost no young people who are able to work in the city. There are very little of them. Even some children are being born, but it's like 4 child per month, so it's a demographical issue as well, and we need different solutions, digital solutions, but I don't know whether digital solutions can work, like delivery of food by drones. Is it the potential we have to discuss? Because actually the situation may happen, there will be no one to bring the food to people.
Yeah. Traditionally, I will support what Oksana has just said, because everything she just mentioned really resonates with me. There is a limit to everything, including people, volunteers, employees of military administrations. I urge everyone to really support them. And there is a certain symbiosis of volunteer groups and society organizations. Not all of them are formalized, but they all interact. And part of the regional bureaucracy is that people are starting to understand that without these crazy people from civil society, they cannot really keep the situation stable. The situation is indeed borderline, and there are partnerships that occur when everyone is helping one another. A certain modification of management processes occurs. For instance, while previously people would make monitoring visits to understand what is happening, now the model is that they look a local person on the ground, a local monitor, a local expert, and you don't have to go because it's dangerous, you have less funding, and somebody is doing this work on the ground. Sometimes it can lead to a reduced quality of what the report says, but it also supports the local potential. Hospitals have turned into hospice care establishments, essentially. There is nowhere to evacuate people. Some of the people who were evacuated from like ultra-red areas just stay in hospitals. After the Kakhovska Dam was blown up, hospitals became one of the few places still providing utility services. Palliative care establishments in the region, I don't even know about Kherson Oblast, but in neighboring ones, there is nowhere to put people. Those that cost 25,000 hryvnias a month, the conditions are more or less. The cheaper ones have much worse conditions, they say. Thanks to donor assistance, quite a lot of expensive, high-quality medical equipment was purchased. But there are two hospitals, 2 doctors per hospital function. There's one GI specialist in the entire city. We have not crossed the line yet, but it's very close because, like Oksana said correctly, Milkov's population is 60 plus. By the way, one of the most important factors of resilience is that people 60 plus went to work. A lot of younger people are either in the army or hiding because they don't want to be drafted. People of middle age don't go to work because the salaries are low. So the city functions thanks to retirees who went back to their workplace, or who take care of their neighbors, or take care of neighbors' apartments, or animals who stayed after families who were evacuated, or they take care of the graves. The city needs care. Both people and spaces need care. And one of the motives for why they are not leaving, they see that once you left and nobody signals that there is life, it will, the buildings will die. People in Kherson feel that their departure would increase the void, would increase chaos and ruin, so they are staying strong. If I may, I will quickly add that we have, you said that there's demand for the caregiving services. My colleague's mom remains in Kherson, our Olya Zhukova. You mentioned people who are older, and she said it's my mission to preserve the housing for you, so you have where to come back. It's the point of their life to take care of the space, to take care of the house, so that the city would wait for their children. So that's sort of their life's work. And we understand that the city lives as long as people live there. And depletion of the territory is the highest risk and the biggest danger following the military danger. I really support what you're saying. Those I asked told me that if you have a meaning, it's easier to go through all these ordeals. I want to draw a parallel between what happened 100 years ago when Ukraine tried to gain independence and what we have now. I guess the most prominent work explaining this pain and this meaning for which we find meaning is Josip Turyansky's Beyond Pain, which shows this transition of people in captivity and their death one after another. Those who love stay alive. Those who have a meaning to keep living, they do keep living. And I think a similar thing is happening in Kherson. This sense of meaning is suddenly all the more acute. I encountered incredible stories in Kherson. For instance, I remember how I came there. I checked into a hotel. It was like 2019 or so. And in the hotel, at breakfast, we had canned pineapples. I called the manager and I said, "Hey, do you understand where you live? Do you go to the market sometimes? Do you see something there?" He didn't quite understand what I was saying. I gave him 200 hryvnias and I asked for fresh tomatoes from the market. The employee went to the nearest supermarket and bought some plastic, God knows what, instead. And you understand this lack of cohesion with the space you're in. I think it's a lot less common now, because those who didn't have a meaning, they couldn't find their place either, and they found this meaning or they left and searched for this meaning, but they probably didn't see any point in staying or fighting. And when we speak about adapting, Russians are also capable of adapting, but I would say this is a sort of slave-like ability to adapt. They become part of the system and end up becoming a tool of murder, a tool of harm. But this is about a different adaptation. This adaptation through agency. We know who we are. We know what we need. And challenges will be enormous because the entire economy, the entire agriculture, this will need to be reinvented. We are in completely new environmental conditions, safety conditions. Even if Russians are pushed back far away, everything they left in the ground will be a threat for a long time. I remember something that I found really impressive when I was doing these expeditions to become more familiar with Kherson, is that Oleshki Desert that was a consequence of the attempts by Oleshki Kosich to feed itself and animals sort of damaged root systems with their hooves, and that's how a desert started. So to stop this desertification, they started planting a forest there. In the 19th century, and it went on until the 1970s. This process went on through the fall of an empire and attempted independence, another iteration of this empire, German occupation. So now we are aware that we will have to establish very long processes of a great number of people who never had a connection with Kherson coming up with completely new ideas. And this essentially means that such things can only be done if you have a strong partnership, a strong coalition. And I believe through this coalition, Kherson acquired this agency that gives it ability to maintain the attention of Kyiv, Lviv, Dnipro, Kryvyi Rih, and so on. I see how much Kherson is discussed every time I come to Ivano-Frankivsk. I see these sort of Kherson islands being created in other cities. And it's not about them coming back or not. They involve others in the issues of Kherson. I remember how I asked restaurateurs 5 to 7 years ago. I asked, can you describe the taste of Kherson to me? What is it like? Is it salty, tangy, moist, sweet? And I remember people were looking at me all weird and I didn't understand what I wanted from them. I went to Velika Kopany, I looked at what was happening at that market, and then I came to the Ottoman restaurant, which was probably one of the few high-profile restaurants, Pan Ottoman in Leszke. And I asked, how many types of tomatoes do you have in the menu? They said 3. I said, I was just on the market where they have 40 on a bad day. The question is that understanding the value, understanding the wealth, understanding the potential, understanding of yourself eventually will also help to broadcast this value to the outside, and the outside world will respond to that. That is why the present time is extremely difficult, but we need to keep in mind that, it's not over yet. The fact that Kherson was liberated opened up a new page in hell, and it's really crucial for Kherson to survive, for Kherson to be able to stay strong, and for the concern that exists today to maintain its strong sides, to maintain its solidarity without going overboard. We don't have a guaranteed positive outcome at the end. We have to fight for it, like Nord Road and natural situation of the human civilization is decay. For development, we need to make effort. Development is not natural. So the question is whether we will be able to launch the processes that will be able to facilitate and foster this development. I believe that Kherson has this drive, has the capacity, and has the necessary ingredients. It's lacking only the things it can't resolve by itself. Kherson alone cannot handle the security situation. But now we have to gain some time. We need to understand how we can engage in national and international resources to Kherson, which will help it to preserve the best aspects and share them with Kherson residents of the new generation. Thank you, Evhen. This conversation actually turned into a vision of what we can do with Kherson, what Kherson is going to be like. This long-term prospect that we were talking about. Unfortunately, this is about a long war. And this issue of frontier nature, what is it? The new Ukrainian frontierness, the security conditions. Though today we actually heard that a place needs constant oversight, literally and metaphorically, and personally, while listening about various future scenarios, I am constantly concerned about various scenarios we think about, including very negative ones. How can we use this positive charge in very difficult conditions that Kherson residents live in? What can we do about them? I feel like I don't have an answer to this question. I am not part of the community. I am part of the Kherson fan club, but I'm not a local. I love the city. Yeah, in 2021 I almost bought property that would now be occupied just on an emotional whim. The issue is rather that Kherson today has acquired meaning, and this ability to form meanings is quite special, it's quite rare. Look, I think I can provide you with a very simple example. It's about creativity. If we look at societies with the so-called great literatures, they are mostly empires. Why? Because they could concentrate the resources, pool the resources, and some people could only work on something creative. And people subjugated by these empires weren't less gifted. They didn't have their chances. Not every Shevchenko was released from slavery. If we look at where this happens in a non-institutional way, it is always at the frontier, because frontier is about a competition of meaning. And that's an environment that encourages the creation of meanings. I understand how important it is for the Galicia area where I'm from to refer to their experience from late 19th or 20th century, because that's when where the frontier was. Now the frontier is actually in Kherson. Now it is a borderline area. And now we have Kherson in very different places. It's in Kherson itself. It's even in Miami, yes. But the question is that one day this tension that exists due to the frontier nature can turn into this creative capacity with new meanings, new ideas. The farther you are from this frontier, the harder time you're going to have. That is why the Ukrainian Catholic University is so important for Lviv, or the Pomprilad institution is so important for Ivano-Frankivsk, because these are institutions on a completely new level. Kherson is about a fight for survival now, and it's about a search of the components that are going to maintain a vision for the future. I understand that we are now more aware of who we are, and this vision exists as part of our understanding of who we are and where we are. I remember in 2016, 2017, people in Kherson would say, "What kind of Europe? Come on." It's also about the importance of modernization. I remember how I would come back to Kherson from abroad, and yeah, that was a really tiny airport, more a canal than the airport, but it worked. You could fly there. I woke up in Amsterdam, and at lunch I was in Kherson, and this understanding of how important this connection is and what world you want to be a part of, this understanding is invaluable, because otherwise nothing will change.
Yes, the vision of the future, and regarding the Europeanness, I am a big fan of the great Lithuanian Commonwealth. So, like, it all started in the Middle Age, right? It has always been Europe. We have material monuments, and we have toponymics. Yes, There were artifacts found, like we're talking about Grand Duchy of Lithuania. Some artifacts were found and brought to the exhibition to Kiev, and Mesbin Bereit, without any state funding, managed to organize all this. I saw it in Kaunas later on. This exposition, I mean. Yeah. And there was a Vitov Tower, although many archaeologists had doubts about its origin and time of construction. Anyway, this European layer of history and the Lithuanian one is present, and it seems to me it would be something important for the citizens of Kherson as well, and they were also able to see it. And I remember those debates about the identity history, when all of a sudden it was revealed that it was like some 300 years before Russia, whatever. Back then there was a European civilization. As to the scenarios, one of the scenario is the liquidation of Kherson region. It's unrealistic scenario, but if the events continue as they are, and with the degradation of security and even if the degradation of life continues, we don't know. Let me remind you, like in July last year, we were still able to go all the way to Dnipro, and in 1 year we have the situation when the security situation deteriorated a lot. But it's like a very extreme scenario. I don't think this is what is going to happen. I think it will be something in between. I'm not a military person, and I cannot actually evaluate this. We have to understand that scenario depends exclusively on solving the question with security. It means it depends on the army, whether they would be able to stabilize situation, or on the contrary, the front line will shift and will get closer. What else I would like to add, that it's very important to work with different experiences. Like there is a piece of Kherson all over the world, as we said, but there is Kherson in Kherson, and some people devaluate some voices that come from other places like Ivano-Frankivsky or Miami, and in order to have this common city, common place, we have to harmonize all the voices and not to let any exclusiveness. And this problem, we faced it right after the liberation. We were trying to work with it, we were trying to think about it, and right now the task looks very difficult as to the ability of Kherson to consolidate around itself a lot of things. Here we see a lot of progress, and the symbolic weight of Kherson has risen. If we had more people from Kherson here, I would ask them to raise their hand. And were they ever asked in Kiev, Zhytomyr, or other cities, has Kherson been liberated? Because a lot of people from Kherson heard this question, or another question. Kherson was occupied. It tells us that there are a lot of news about Kherson, but you have to be willing to know them. And but the level of knowledge in Ukraine, the average level of knowledge in Ukraine is like this. Yes, I am now using the map when I am on my trips, because I have to show it. especially for the foreigners. We have to show the condition of the region, which territories are occupied, which territories are liberated. I think the future of the Kherson, and there's a question of security, and like it depends on the question of security. It depends whether the Ukrainian armed forces would be able to push the enemy further. Maybe there will be some change at the battlefield. And then the destiny of the field will depend on the number of people who will come back to the city and who those people are going to be. And there should be some preconditions for people to come back. Precondition number one, security, situation of security. Precondition number two, housing. Whether there will be enough housing, whether it will be restored, whether some other housing accommodation will be provided, because it's a lottery. And I think here we can find people who have already their homes lost, and my home is still there, but it can be damaged every minute. And the third factor is employment, so like working vacancies. So even if people go back to the city, like the biggest number can be 130,000 of population. We had 340,000 of people before. Like there are 16 communities in Kherson territorial community. And as of today, and some of the settlements that are part of Kherson territorial community, they are now completely empty. There are no buildings and no people, and the question is whether we should bring back to life this villages, these settlements. And there is a big threat, the loss of people. There's a big threat for Kherson, and it will be a difficult task how to bring people back, how to motivate them, how to provide them with conditions, some exclusive conditions to make sure that people change their place of life. They can relaunch the business, they can come and work there, they can come back and work there. And potential scenario is a military hub. There are a lot of conversations about that as well, that the infrastructure in Kherson will be built around some military needs. Yeah, you see, the city is not something inside the fortress, it's what grew around the fortress. Fortress was there to provide security, and the life was flourishing around it. So if there is no security, there is no life. And even if Kherson turns into the military hub, it's an additional argument for a lot of people to say, okay, we can build businesses, houses, to plant gardens, and it will be protected. It's for a long time. I will say just a couple of words. There was information in the local media that in August 36 people died and there were more than 200 people who were injured. Russians consciously killing civilian population in Kherson, and they say like there are no more civilians in Kherson, and the people in civil clothes are the military personnel who just changed, maybe 60 people, 60 plus, and children, they are also military personnel. Looks like that in their main. So it looks really like hunting. The drones who are hunting people, hunting vehicles, hunting public buses. Today there was another example of such hunting. They continue destroying the city, and I cannot agree that right now Kherson has a lot of attention. It feels like sometimes the world just doesn't see it. I don't understand why the world is not screaming about it. They are hunting civilians, and no one says a word. Yeah, the reality can be very painful indeed, can be very complicated, and sometimes our interpretation do not coincide with reality. And as of today and in the future, in the past and in the future, it's a factor of security, and it will play a very important role in certain scenarios, like about the vision of the future of the city, of the region, etc., and conglomerate. So we're talking about Kherson and we're talking about the region. The region right now is divided by the occupation and by all the challenges that occupation brought. The Russians are working very effectively at those territories they are controlling. How do you think whether us, Ukrainian part, do we need to pay attention on the temporarily occupied territories of Kherson regions, for example? What we should pay attention to and how we can work with it, because it's also the question of people, of security, and everything we've been discussing today. Yes, of course, we should. And we should do more than that. Our official position that we are fighting not only for the territories, there are our people there, and that's why all this attempts to impose Ukraine with signing some kind of peace treaties that force Ukraine to refuse from their territories. We say always we cannot do that because our people live there, our people stay there, and it's true, our people are there. We had 4 waves of polls for the people who moved out of occupation. We work a lot with the occupied territories of the south of Ukraine, and there is the idea that only the people who took Russian side on the occupied territories, it's false. I came across it quite often, including from people who work with national memory, including people who are high-ranking officials. They say, we just have to forget about those people. They are not our people. They support Russia. It is not true. And it's the devaluation of what people who live in the occupied territory do and how they continue to help the Ukrainian armed forces. Right now, Ukraine as a state does nothing to help people who stay in occupation. If we look at the number of inquiries that Saldo tells about Kherson and Rhine-Bank in Ukraine, like if not every day, then every second day we monitor the occupational resources and we see that they work with Kherson and the liberated part of Kherson region, and we do not do anything. We do not address people who stay in occupation. It's very important for people to know that we remember about them, that we talk about them. After the finding from USAID was stopped, all the information projects that were aimed at the territory of Kherson and the region. And those were the projects that were trying to establish this communication. So the Scream Realia, News of Priazovia, Arkainfo, Foro, a lot of other media resources, most. So the media resources from Kherson, and not only from Kherson, the Center of Journalist Investigation. Everyone felt that like there is no more grant funding, there is no state support. Only Suspilne Kherson is still active. Another problem is regarding assistance was moving out, assistance for the children to enter the university, the attitude to people in the state migration service and other institutions, lack of procedures. A lot of people are not able to move out because they are afraid, because to found themselves just at the street, like they will have no place to live, and it's a problem. And the problems are being accumulated. And one of the respondents of our poll, she told me that when she crossed the boundary in Kherson region, she was crying. She was kissing the flag, and she was giving hugs our soldiers. And then she went to Odessa, and she heard in one of the cabinets of the officials, like, why you ever came here? And she was crying. So we have to speak, we have to be honest, and people who stay in the occupation, they try to keep informed despite the blocking of the informational resources. They do know, and they wait to be addressed. And it's a crime that this policy has failed. Yes, I may add, it's not maybe the work with occupied communities directly, but the work with people and organizations who work in exile right now. We are talking about all the IDPs in Ukraine. Now we are doing the facilitation school for 3 regions, Kherson, Mykolaiv, and Zaporizhia, and we have selected Askania community. De facto they are occupied, de jure there is a military administration, and right now all the administration coordinate the hubs in the cities and towns, and people can come there, people from Kherson region can come there to receive different services, humanitarian services. These places are magnets because people come there to have different meetings, to have lessons of Ukrainian language, etc. It's very important to work because now we contribute our resources to make sure that when people are able to go back to discussion of important processes in their community, that they have someone who is trained, who know how to talk about it. And this dialogue after the deoccupation will not be simple. They will go back to discussion of their internal interests, because right now it's more the question of survival, but just outside of the community. That's why I think we have to work with those people who moved out in order to preserve their identity as the part of certain communities that is under the occupation. Yes, let me add briefly. We imagine the condition of people under the occupation. People have mistrust. The first thing Russians do is to destroy the trust. Like, you shouldn't trust anyone, even to the members of your family. Yes, it's like undermining the resilience. Yes, undermining the solidarity, undermining resilience, undermining the collective resistance. And of course, it's much easier to manipulate such people, and they become whistleblowers much easier. They want all the population of the occupied territory to become whistleblowers and to whistleblow on each other. And there was a lot of fear that people will be afraid to talk after moving out. Yes, they still have fear, but they have tremendous need to talk after they get out from the occupation. They really want to talk. They're looking for someone who can listen to them, and to give people this possibility to talk is very important. It's very therapeutical. It helps to build the connections. It helps a person to get back to the civilization, and those people would be the first communicators, first bridge to those who stay at the temporary occupied territories.
Thinking back to 2014, when Russians captured the peninsula, we were saying that there were Ukrainian citizens left there. But apart from conversations, nothing else happened. Like, within a year maybe, it was all forgotten. And it so happened that this story of mine we were taken to prison in Sevastopol. In Sevastopol, they opened my eyes and showed, look how we are investing here. We built a hidden power plant. We are making the roads. I remembered Kherson Oblast. I remembered Crimea. I cannot really compare it in favor of Kherson region. No matter how much we were convincing the authorities that we had to invest into Kherson so that residents of Crimea would see how Ukraine is living and want to come back, those were just words. Unfortunately, the situation is happening again. People feel abandoned. Somebody says they made their choice, they got Russian passports. It's a lie. There were torture chambers built there. I understand very well what they do to people there. And blaming them for getting a passport to buy medication in a pharmacy, we don't have the right to do that. We have to send them every signal that they are not forgotten. People from Kherson and the region clearly understand that Skadovsk, Holopryst, and Tyrypinsk, they are the most patriotic communities in the region, in the entire east and south of Ukraine. They were created out of people who relocate from the west of Ukraine. If we take a vote for pro-Ukrainian political forces, they always were among the leaders there. And imagine a situation today when they start thinking, we are forgotten, the state does not care about us, they are staying silent about what we're going through. I don't know. I think we need to scream about this. We need to say that today we will liberate Kherson, tomorrow we will free Tyrypinsk, the day after Holopryst, and we need to be truly doing this instead of retreating. Thank you. Pavlo Klimkin, former Minister of Foreign Affairs, once said, we don't have a deep state, we have deep society. It seems to me that those calls should not be directed at the state. They should be directed at the state if we had an accountable state. But I think this is more about solidarity on the social level, to keep remembering, to keep helping, to keep writing, speaking. And I think that at the level of society, it's always not enough. I'm always impressed how residents of Crimea, particularly Crimean Tatars, well, they have no opportunity to have a space to discuss the future of Crimea, turned a literature festival into such a space. You mean Crimean Fig? Yes. That festival became an area where they concentrate this meaning. The question is that, like I said, it's always not enough. We always need to do more. But it seems to me it's really important that we not start saying that if a certain ministry doesn't do this, it's not working. Recently we had this very hyped up Ministry of Unity, and solidarity in society exists like separately from this. The question that exists here is about the professional civil society organizations and how involved they are with this process. Last year, the Institute of Frontier had a conference that we organized together with the Healthy Solutions Foundation for Open Society, and we spoke about restoring governance in the occupied territories. And yes, it was a conversation behind closed doors. It was an expert conversation. But Georgian experts who joined this conference were saying, see, we are afraid to speak about this. We don't ever make these discussions public or even do them in an expert space because we understand that we cannot handle the response that we will encounter. And there was civil society, there were representatives of the government, of security institutions, and so on. We have to understand what it's all going to look like. And I feel that a strategic mistake that was made by the previous administration was that changes to the constitution about the national and cultural autonomy of Crimea were not national cultural, you are saying. Sorry. Changes which would implement an understanding of what governance in Crimea would look like after liberation, with a proposal for the two-chamber parliament, including the Majlis, and so on. We also not provide a clear idea of what prospects should exist for the liberated occupied territories here in Donetsk Oblast and other areas. We are currently observing that the decision on the restoration of the Great Meadow is something that is happening by itself, not as a result of a government policy. I would say sometimes contrary to the initiatives that exist. And this question actually entails a lot of other questions. So very often we hear from people who really tend to count on the state, like how many conferences can you hold, how many discussions. Sorry, if we don't have a space where we'll discuss ideas, if we don't have ideas where intentions can be declared, if we don't have spaces where visions are voiced, without these spaces we will not have anything to say to people who are fighting, who are risking their lives every day to resist and to make occupation more pricey for Russians, to ensure that this integration happens seamlessly in the future. Thank you very much. I think we have quite a dynamic, interesting discussion about different stories and connections with people in the occupied territories. Those who remember the previous panel, we spoke about this attitude, like whether your relatives were in occupation, so on. But for me, during these questions, I heard the word Crimea multiple times. Crimea, South, I even heard peninsula, and I was like, what kind of peninsula? The current situation in history and today, we have this platform where we can discuss certain meanings, certain visions. I have a more general question to you. The new southern identity today, like if we step outside of Kherson a little bit without abandoning Kherson by itself, in your opinion, taking into account what we talked about concerning resilience, risks of resilience, the social costs, certain approximate scenarios of things that can happen, the security situation, where does it take us? Kherson as a frontier city with different scenarios, but still, its place In this broader, in this big picture, so to speak, of the new south of Ukraine, what is it? Because today it is really becoming something new. Thanks to all these modern events, thanks to all our experiences of war, our experience with the occupation of Crimea, the potential constitutional changes. We're not going to discuss that today. That's a separate, very interesting conversation. But still, your vision of the role of Kherson in the new Ukrainian South, what can it look like? It would depend on the symbolic image that will be created by this new media. We are looking for movies regarding occupation. It will all depend on how it will be visualized and how much people relate to this, because there is a lot of material indeed. We need to take it, we need to work. I'm sorry, but if we look at the new southern identity in Ukraine, like not only the image of Kherson itself or Kherson residents, I wanted to look at a slightly bigger picture. Can we ask this question at all? Look, the pride of Kherson residents for themselves, the festival that was after the 11th of November, after the liberation, it shows that there are some completely new qualities, but of course it's a difficult process, and identity is defined by multiple parameters. We asked people what changed. They were like, children remember Russians only using bad words in the presence of their parents, and parents don't say bad things about that, don't reproach them. So the attitude to Russians really shifted. On the other hand, there are groups of people that emerge that take on responsibility, but also others that completely shun responsibility after liberation. Those who are used to using humanitarian aid only, and this was also part of their identity. When you refuse to take accountability, when you just get, when you just receive. Another head of the local administration, we asked him, how do you think identity changed? How did your people change in the community? He's like, yeah, nobody likes Russians anymore. Ukrainian is considered valuable, but the idea that our joint space doesn't belong to anyone, it remained, and people still keep tossing trash in the street. They can still ruin some community property, and there are still discussions about toponym changes, and this all remains. This didn't disappear. So the liberation was perceived as a miracle indeed, and there was an expectation of the world and of themselves that there would be sort of a miraculous transformation. But time went by and there was no transformation like that. People remained the people. You mean that the carriage turned into a pumpkin? No, it didn't turn into a pumpkin, but it sort of had these tiny pumpkin sprouts. But this is my subjective opinion. I want to add, although it may be not entirely relevant, but if we speak about the southern identity in Ukraine, I believe that the notion of the Ukrainian South just emerged. It was never mentioned before the full-scale invasion. People weren't using it. We were talking about Kherson Oblast, Mykolaiv Oblast, Odessa Oblast, which, if they didn't compete, there was a certain competition for who is more provincial, who is less provincial. And there was still certain competition. People went to Odessa to go on holiday. There was a certain exchange, but it still seems to me that there was competition. I think that the nature of the relationship and mutual positioning between Kherson, Mykolaiv, and Odessa has changed as of now. I think there is a risk to lose that because nothing is happening with that. I think since we have certain festivals, like in Odessa there was a festival recently with a lot of civil society organizations. I think it was called the Black Sea Steppe, but still Mykolaiv residents understand the cost of this, that Kherson stopped the advance. Odessa understands this too, but support from Mykolaiv and Odessa works very strongly. There is a lot of support they see. I have a different experience in Ivano-Frankivsk, and I think becoming your own person, like becoming accepted in the community in Ivano-Frankivsk region is harder than in Odessa or Mykolaiv because there is still a connection. I know a lot of businesses that relocated to Mykolaiv, businesses from Mykolaiv that relocated to Odessa. The interaction is very strong, at least among businesses. I think there is also the sense of support, and I don't remember that the support was there before the full-scale invasion. This is my experience. I realize that it is mostly subjective, but I think it is important to speak about the importance of the South on the national level, to speak about value, to say that South really means a lot. Thank you. So we are talking about Ukrainian South as cooperation, as support, as opening up the meanings. If we start speaking about a new identity, I think it is a bit too early because it is just in the process of formation. But I think if we look at who we were before the full-scale invasion, we will not be the same again. I think we have changed, and as for who we became, we will only be able to find that out on the distance. We have a common issue number one today, but if we look at other issues that we have, you know, I am confident that people from the South have this special characteristic that probably is not common. In the South, people are more vivacious, they are more optimistic, and this us slightly different. I want us to maintain this feature. I want it to keep helping us. And as for the future, I am very confident that regardless of anything, we are going to win in this war. I don't doubt it. And not only because the truth is up to us, but because we have more life in us, you know. And perhaps this is what forms our new identity. Thank you.
Yes, Hera applauds for the vitality of Ukrainian South. Now, after those words, it's difficult to add something. Yes, it was very beautiful. I have a question, but I'm looking at the audience and yeah, you see we have a lot of hands. Let's talk. We have a microphone, so please let's start from this end. We can ask several questions, and we have a little time for discussion. Hrihori Baran, International Foundation Amidrodzenia or Renaissance. I'm very grateful for this conversation. I would like to thank you for saying that we have to talk more about the occupied territories, and we have to keep remembering that our people stay there. And I heard that people from Kherson feel very irritated when they hear like it's an invincible city. Same as people in Kharkiv, they feel irritated when they say like Kharkiv is invincible, Kharkiv is from reinforced concrete, as we used to say. Kharkiv used to be a student city. It will not be a student city in the nearest future, and they started a project Kharkiv on the line, the 10th parallel, and they started this inclusive project. It's a platform of dialogue about how we see Kharkiv. So is there any project like this about Kherson? There was a question raised about the liquidation of Kherson region, and it feels like we do lack this type of inclusive platform, inclusive area. If there is such a project, who is taking care of it? If there is no such project, who could become the moderator of such project, of such platform, to make sure it can be effective and it can last? It can be long-lasting. Yes, thank you very much. It's a very meaningful question. Please, who would like to comment on it? Oksana? Yeah, I'll take this mic. Currently, to make sure we could have such a project where we could have different platforms for discussion, we don't have such a project at the moment, but in 2022 we started discussions regarding the new identity, regarding how we feel Kherson right now, and we were talking about Kherson and Kherson area, Kherson and Kherson area, Khersonshina as we call it. We had a number of events, and there were experts provided by Protection Foundation, and there was a forum. And it's very important to continue and feel as like it's very important to keep the balance, to make sure that the participants of discussion are not only the people who live in Kherson, who work in Kherson, who moved out of Kherson, because we have to work with it. Because if we say like people who are not in Kherson have the no right to vote and talk about the future of Kherson, because this is not a stable, sustainable solution, and also the people who continue to live in Kherson, they should have their voice. All the sectors should be represented: civil society, business, and state stakeholders. If we do not provide all this representation, then the focus might shift. What about people who are not from Kherson or Kherson region? How do you think? We have an official project, tender Khersonification, and all experts who join undergo this filter. Yes, of course, it should be a very wide discussion, but the key thing, it shouldn't be once a year. It should be a platform that should be working constantly and providing the solutions. Because of the lack of communication, we don't know a lot of things, like what this city council is doing, what is the military administration is doing. We accuse them of not doing enough, but sometimes maybe they just don't have enough resources to communicate their activities. Sometimes they do not manage to hear us, and then the solutions they take are not very inclusive. Thank you very much. Volodymyr? Okay. Larissa Palska, Communities of Kherson Foundation. Today we were talking about memorialization, about justice, and now we are talking about the future of Kherson and about its present. And I would like to add a little bit. I think there's this identity of people of Kherson. Like when I can say I'm a Ukrainian, I am from Kherson. It emerged not only during the war. I just want to remind you how the people of Kherson were gathering without being coordinated by someone to overthrow the monument to Lenin. And how many people were there? How? What happened? There were always 2,000-3,000 of people. So Kherson and its people are forming their identity, and they show their identity. It's a continuous process. This is my first comment, and the second comment about Kherson today and its state of survival. The situation is very threatening, and the tendency is very threatening when the people who volunteer in Kherson region are being mobilized, when the doctors are being mobilized, when the communal workers are being mobilized, the men from communal enterprises. Kherson is not just the frontier. Kherson is the area of combat actions, and the men and the specialists who are in Kherson right now, they are at war already. And we have to communicate it to our authorities, because without working hands, without doctors, without volunteers and other structures that are critical, Kherson will not survive. Thank you so much. Thank you. Please. Okay, Volodymyr, and then you. It will be the last questions. Please, maybe it's not a question, it's a comment, and you may comment it as well. On it as well. I will continue what Larissa started saying. I was very triggered by the words new identity. In my opinion, there is no new identity. We don't need any new identity. We always have to talk about Southern Ukrainian identity, which has always been there. It was not on the spotlight. The Kremlin narrative was trying to make it fade in the term like Southern Ukraine or this Malorussia term they were using. People of Kherson, do you remember, like, how do we say certain words, like for example sho, what? No one else says this word in this way. Unfortunately, we start speaking about our unique identity only when the tragedy came. Let's check the referendum of 1991 and let's check how many people in Kherson region voted for the independence. It means the identity was there. Maybe it was not 100% conscious, maybe we didn't talk about it a lot, but it was there. And it allowed 1991 happen, it allowed 2040 happened, and it allowed what happened, like this resistance that happened in 2022. And what was nurturing this identity? It's Steppe and freedom and will. This is our identity. Good evening. I wanted to thank for this conference. It's very interesting. I'm Elena. We work with the consequences of Kakhovka Dam explosion. And I have a short reflection and I have a question. The reflection. We have such a cultural notion as frontier and as borderline. In Ukraine, we have a lot of borderline cities which have their culture and identity. But those are the strongest points of our country because the citizens of such cities are constantly on the crossroad of different cultures. They can see a lot of things, they can compare a lot of things, and they can choose. It's not only the experience of Kherson, but also the experience of Kharkiv, of Sumy, and other cities which at some point started to protect their identity. And it's not a question of new identity, it's the identity that was forgotten and was reinvented. And that's why I think such cities on the frontier, it's the pulse of Ukraine. And I hope in the future they will become the engine of Ukraine recovery, because there is life in this city. And I'm very grateful for this discussion about Kherson. I've been there only once, although I am from the south of Ukraine. Within our project, UNESCO Representatives, we work on the preservation of cultural heritage. And the explosion at Kakhovka Dam, there were a lot of losses, and we're trying to save a lot of artifacts. But we were spoken today about the Great Meadow, and it's being restored right now. So I really wonder what people who live in Kherson, is Kakhovka Dam something that existed for you? Is it a part of your identity, or is it something artificial that we do not have to restore? How do you perceive it? Who would like to reply? What is Kakhovka Dam in the memory of people of Kherson? I would like to say just a couple of words. I think Kakhovska gas should be, Kakhovska power plant should be rebuilt on Kakhovska Dam, because the navigation on Dnipro River depends on it. I will not say anything new for you, but Dnipro is dying. Maybe it's not the piece of news for you. And without the vessels that would be able to navigate on Dnipro River, the perspectives are not very good. And there was a man, Alexei Vodatursky, who dedicated his life to restoring the navigation on Dnipro, and we were helping him and the mayors of all the cities who were along the Dnipro River. We were supporting his ideas. We were trying to bring through his ideas regarding the restoration of navigation in Dnipro, and we said that vessels are the most sustainable and the most cost-effective type of transport. But the big transport lobby in Verkhovna Rada didn't allow us to change the legislation in the favor of the river transport. And without Kakhovka Dam, there cannot be the full-scale navigation. That's why I think we have to restore Kakhovka power plant and the dam. Maybe someone else would like to say a couple of words. Everyone in Kherson wants to restore Kakhovka power plant. All the people who live elsewhere want the Great Meadow. So it's a separate topic and separate discussion. Yes, there will be no Great Meadow. It will be a desert. It's a question of vision, because it's very easy to come to the idea that the best future is when I was young, as people say. And if we don't want to get into this trap, it means that we have to understand what we are doing. Because I was impressed how inefficient the usage of water was in the agriculture in the south just before the invasion. In 2020, there were no snow anywhere in Ukraine, and it was very dry. And I remember back then I was talking to the farmers, and 1 year before they would tell us, well, we'll always have water, and suddenly they realized they may not have it. And so we have to think how we solve one problem without creating other problem. Whether the restoration of navigation is possible without flooding back the Great Meadow. It's a question. Is agriculture possible without building the dam again? It's a good question. We have to talk about whether it is possible for the communities to live there. Yeah, you told that there was one tree and one well in Chaplinka, and Chaplinka was a big village, yeah. And whether we can understand how we reach some sustainable solutions without violence from the side of other people against others, without violence against culture, against nature. And it's a big question, and I hope it's a future of Ukraine to be able to talk about it, because we cannot build the power plant again like force, and then someone as Dovzhenko will make a movie, and you know, Novakhovka stone embroideries were created, like, because you know the way Kakhovka power plant was built, it was built basically in the conditions of a concentration camp. It's great that we can preserve our identity even under the conditions of concentration camp, but can we build something which is not Gulag? And it's a question of desovietization. It's a question to all of us, how to get to this new regime, and we would manage to get to this new regime only when we do not have constant threats, when we have stable security, when we are able to plan our life for years ahead. If we are talking about the key task of a person is to survive by this evening, then it will be very difficult to talk to this person about some kind of visions. And that is why we have to understand that it's our common task, because if we are not able to fight for Kherson today, tomorrow we're going to have problems in Kiev again. Thank you so much.
I understand there can be a lot of questions, but our speakers have been talking for almost 2 hours, so we are going to wrap up today's conversation. Let's have, just as an exercise for everyone, please finish the phrase for me, the metaphor. Living in the frontier today, what does it mean? Maybe everyone can say what in one sentence. It is painful and interesting, always being a naked nerve. It's adrenaline. A quote. I guess it's about not putting anything off until tomorrow. At the crossroads of two civilizations, European and Asian, and constant warfare. Thank you. So, we are wrapping up today's conversation, but look, even with this metaphor, living in the frontier, it's adrenaline and a certain complex vision of the future. But to wrap up our conversation, I want to bring us back to the motive of this conference about life. That there is still life in this region, in the south. And this southern vitality and Ukrainian vitality overall, its rediscovery, I think is something that we really need today. It's really important. It's also part of our joint resilience and both old and new identity that we are constructing today, if I can say so. And let's thank our speakers.